Um, well, I just kind of wanted to start today with thanking you all for being here. This is our last Be Learning Hour of 2020, and we got Josh to be our guest today. It's going to be so fun. And I just wanted to start with kind of a reminder of what Be Learning Hour is and kind of the purpose of it, just set the expectation today. Really, it's just a gathering space of people who believe that business should do more than just make money. And it's broader than that too. It's just people that are living out their purpose. And I know this is a time of like extreme hardship for a lot of businesses, and I just want to recognize that, and also kind of celebrate this space. And we really feel like this momentum is growing in this kind of purpose-driven business community. Mark and I were asked the other day, like, how is the community building going? How have your clients interacted? How is it going? And I think we could honestly say that we're feeling the momentum build, and it's a slow process, but it was a great question, and it's kind of the purpose of why we exist, and it's great to have you all here and be a part of it. So as always, let's just start with some introductions. Mark, will you go first?
Sure. So Mark Odegaard, my wife started Measurement about 3 years ago. And I joined her in the work last summer, so 2019. So I've been here about almost a year and a half. And we focus on B Corp, helping companies become B Corp certified, improving their sustainability programs. And this work has been really great. It's so much more fulfilling than working for an insurance company. So yeah, I could talk more about myself, but that's probably good enough.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, next on my screen is Cassie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cassie. I just recently graduated from Gonzaga, and I work at the Washington Small Business Development Center. I'm based out of Spokane. So I do pretty much client intake and then a little bit of marketing with them. And I don't know if you guys know much about us, but we are a no-cost service for small businesses across the state. So I do a lot of connecting with advisors, figuring out what type of advising they need and who would be the best person to connect them with. So we've been pretty busy recently, but it's also been really incredible to just watch what we can do for people and just watch people be so excited to be supported in that way right now.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah. So next on my screen is Pam.
I am Pam Gallagher, and another part that I learned this summer is I want to take a minute and recognize that we are all sitting, at least I am sitting, on traditional Spokane and Inland Salish speaking tribal lands, and I want to thank them for their hosting us in one way or another. I am currently the owner of a company called Zip2 Water, and we provide help for outdoor event organizers to provide unlimited fresh filter water to participants and visitors. So if you're from Gonzaga, you may have seen the big blue barrels on campus, and we've done them. We've been the free water at Hoop Fest for the last 10 years. We've been doing this a decade, and sometime in the next several months, I'm actually going to be closing it down and transitioning into something new, which I'm trying to figure out right now, but like to still stay in the sustainability area, looking at impact investing, all kinds of interesting things that are happening in that space. So that's me.
So excited to follow what you do next, and I'm excited for your next steps. Hi, Emily, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, I will. Hi, I'm Emily. I am currently a grant writer at Second Harvest, which if you're in Spokane, you might know about it. We're the big food bank that distributes to a bunch of the local pantries in Eastern Washington and North Idaho. So we, as you might imagine, have been very busy lately. And I got connected to measurement back when Kara was kind of leading the charge. Just kind of ran into her at an event for kind of nonprofit focused networking, and was really interested in it and have kind of followed it ever since. And I'm on the marketing and communications team at Second Harvest, and so interested in today's topic in particular. So thanks for having us.
Sweet, yeah. Sarah, would you go next?
Sure, hello. Right as I unmute, my daughter calls my phone. Sorry about that. So I work for Salt, which is a menstrual cup company in Boise, Idaho, and we are a B Corp. And I'm not sure exactly how I heard about measurement, but I live in Spokane and I work remotely from Spokane. So I saw B Corp and Spokane. I got excited and started following on social media. And this is the first time I was able to join a Bee Learning Hour, but I'm happy to be here. And this topic, I recently moved from our customer experience department into our marketing department. And so this topic in particular was interesting to me, and I'm looking forward to hear what Josh has to say.
Thanks.
Awesome. Great to meet you. Welcome.
Yeah, same.
Here.
Nice to have a fellow B Corp member
Yes.
on the call. That's really fantastic.
Yeah, happy to join.
Cool. All right. Next, Dina, will you introduce yourself? This is my mom, guys.
I was going to say that for the end. For my
Sorry.
full transparency, that I am my daughter, and I'm really just excited to learn more about what she's been doing, and it's really fun. I actually work for a baby food company called Sprout Foods. They're based on the East Coast, and I handle West Coast sales for them. And so through kind of learning through Annie and this group, it's been fun too. I've been trying to kind of bring ideas back to my company, which sadly falls on a lot of deaf ears. But you know, it's just, especially with marketing, we're seeing our competitors take advantage of these issues and you know, utilize B Corp status and different farming practices. So I'm just very interested in it, and obviously excited for to be here with Annie and all of you. So thanks for letting me join.
I grew up watching my mom start and run her own business and eventually bring it to the point where she could sell it. And so that's kind of like why I really was strongly interested in being in the business side of things rather than nonprofit or other sectors. And yeah, I've been joking. I can't even get my own mom to join this call. She's been resisting for so long. And I was like, God, so embarrassing. And she's trying not to embarrass me. And anyway, happy
I was
to have
going
her.
to show up with just like glasses and a hat and just be like,
That would have been awesome.
Okay. And welcome, Michelle. So glad you made it. Would you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for inviting me again, Annie. And hi, Emily. Nice to see you. I am Michelle Corson. I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones, and part of my learning about Spokane community, because I moved from Florida not too long ago, I had met Annie and just learning about what she does. And I think I learn more every time I come, and she suggested I come tonight for the topic, so I'm real excited. Sorry I was running late. I was speeding down the freeway, so I hope I didn't pass any of you going too fast. So glad to be here. Thank you, Annie.
Yeah, glad you made it. I'm probably at the point of annoying Michelle now that every time we have Bee Learning Hour, I invite her. But she came, so.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so today we have Josh King, founder and owner of Tinderbox Marketing, and Tinderbox's mission is to leave every client, customer relationship better than they found it. And I love your nod to like the campsite rule, right? Leave it better than you found it. And Josh, you've been working with small businesses and entrepreneurs since 2013. Is that correct?
That's right.
Awesome. Delivering amazing marketing and sales solutions since 2013. And I met Josh through his Business Brew, which is a similar event to this, a monthly coffee with a business expert. And it's in the morning, which is actually really refreshing for me. I appreciate that you do that. And I always learn so much from the Business Brew. I learn more as a host watching Josh, as well as from all of the business experts he has on. So I'm really happy to have him here, and excited to learn from him today. Josh, did I do okay on that intro?
You did great.
Okay, awesome. He's going to talk to us about ethical marketing today.
Yeah. So when Annie reached out, we were going back and forth on some topics, and I think we settled on 3. And I was game to talk about all 3 until Mark came in as the voice of reason and said, maybe we stick to 1 and see where that gets us. And I think the reason why I initially jumped on all 3 was because one of them was ethical marketing. And I don't know that I would have ever said that that's a strength of mine or a subject matter that I'm particularly focused on or know a lot about. So I did a lot of research and was really trying to figure out, and it turns out I've been kind of doing it all along. And that's not like praise of myself or anything. It's just, I think if you are a good-natured person and you have a good business, and we'll talk about what that looks like, and you have a good product, I think most people are interested in running an ethical business from the top down, if you fall into that camp. And so it was nice that Mark gave me that vote of confidence that he felt like I was probably doing it already and was capable to talk about it. It's just funny. And that idea that I may not have been capable probably is deeply rooted in this idea that I didn't go to school for marketing. So full transparency, I went to school for video and audio production. That's what my degree is in. And within a couple of years of working in news media, both TV and radio, and getting very disillusioned with that process, I found myself talking my way into a marketing job. And so I learned marketing on the ground. I learned by doing, which is mostly like marriage, like learning by making mistakes, and then, learning what not to do. Similar to how I parent, I think. Which is a lot of not getting it right and then figuring out how to get it right, a lot of apologies. And it just so happens that I'm now old enough, and that was long ago enough, that I have been marketing with social media. This is so weird to say out loud. I've been marketing with social media as a part of that, and we'll probably talk a little bit about social media today, since 2006. And I started marketing with social media using MySpace. So I joke all the time that I'm not actually old, I'm just internet old. So I remember a lot of things about the internet that I think most people didn't even know exist. So on that note, I totally want this to be conversational. So feel free to use the chat. You can unmute yourself and interrupt. I love answering questions. If I can't answer it, I'll be honest with you and tell you that I don't know the answer to that. But as I was doing research and looking to some of the people whose voices I respect, I came across a lot of really great ideas that I hope we can talk about. But I wanted to start the conversation, as opposed to starting with what is ethical marketing, I wanted to talk about what isn't ethical marketing. Because if I read through this list and it comes from Entrepreneur, I'll actually chat you all the link. This gave a really surprising list to me, and I think you'll find that number 5 could be very broadened to include a lot of other people groups. But this one, there's a few of these that I thought were really surprising. So the first one is what's called surrogate marketing. And the best way to describe that is when you see product placement in a show. And the reason why that's not ethical is because we can promote products like cigarettes and alcohol without ever mentioning it by name, without being pro, right? We're not advocating the use. In fact, it could be a very awful character that is smoking or drinking. But just the simple act of putting it there reminds you that it's a thing. And so when we think about what's ethical or what's unethical, I would say that it is unethical for a brand, a movie, or and by brand, I mean like a franchise, or even a movie house or studio, to include cigarettes or tobacco products or anything that's unhealthy. And there's an argument to be made for and against. But this idea of surrogate marketing, I think, really stood out to me as something that happens all the time. And it's happened for longer than you think. So if you go back and watch any 80s movie and just look at how many products any John Hughes movie, right? And we just watched We just watched Home Alone again. That's a annual one, and that's from like or late 80s, might be 89. The first one came out, and there's the Fuller is the cousin who wets the bed, and they keep referencing how if he drinks Pepsi, he'll wet the bed, and it's over and over and over. And while that's a funny thing, and it's a minor plot point, it's how Kevin ends up in the attic. Did it have to be Pepsi? It could have been soda. It could have been anything. Right? So that one stood out to me. Exaggeration is another one, and I think we're all pretty familiar with that and know what that means. And it's just false claims, right? Best this, most amazing that. If you shop on Amazon at all, you'll see that happen all the time, right? And Amazon, if you know anything about their actual brand guidelines, they discourage that kind of language. They want you to be factual and to the point, and they want you to avoid superlatives or anything like that that might exaggerate, but you'll see it all the time. Best homemade cookies, wonderful flavor, better than the competitor, right? Another one would be puffery. That's number 3. And that one straight from this article is when subjective claims puff up a company's products. And it's similar to exaggeration. So exaggeration would be, get coverage anywhere on earth, right? So think of any cell company and any ad they run. Puffery would be to amp that up by saying it's the best tasting coffee or best coverage or something like that. Another one, unverified claims. And I think you run into that a lot in products that are not approved by the FDA, but are sold as a healthcare product. And that's not me pointing a finger at anybody. I just think that that would be a great place to find examples of that. The 5th one is where I think we can include a lot of people groups, and that's stereotyping women. And I think this is totally, so just, if you know anything about me, you know that I fully accept my role as a white male in today's society, and I'm not afraid to own that. But there was an ad that was running that was basically talking about how dads don't know anything and are careless and horrible and mindless. And I was pointing at the TV screaming, that's a stereotype. That's negative towards men and dads. So I thought that was funny. But this one just mentions women, but I think we could go beyond women. And it starts with women because we do have a tendency in marketing and advertising to hypersexualize women as a way to associate that imagery with a product. But it could go into stereotyping men, or as we live in 2020, stereotyping LGBTQ plus people groups, right? So I think that one is broader than what this article even acknowledges. And then the last one is false comparisons. And that happens a lot. I think the best place to find false comparisons is politics. Anytime you try to make a claim by bringing up something that has nothing to do with it, it's sort of like here now, if you're pro-Trump, anti-Trump, couldn't care less, but the one you hear a lot is, sure, the Trump administration put children in cages at the border, but Obama built the cages. That's a false comparison, right? That just because the cages are built didn't mean you had to use them, right? So that's a false comparison. So I wanted to start with that one and then ask the question, did anybody find any of those to stand out to you in terms of like, I just saw this happen, like me pointing at the screen saying, that's a stereotype towards dads. Has anybody had a recent example of what might be considered unethical marketing that you'd either like to share or use in the chat? And I see Annie put in the chat, Elf is the world's best cup of, oh yeah, that's right, world's best cup of coffee. To whom? Right? That was my first thing. Who says it's the world's best? So anybody have anything they want to jump in with in terms of unethical marketing that you've seen?
One that comes to mind for me is there's been some stuff recently online about H&M being sustainable, and they've been marketing new sustainable lines and stuff like that because most people know that H&M is one of the not best places regarding that. And then you do some digging and you find out that 8% of any of the clothing that they sell is somewhat sustainably sourced or created. And so them just coming out and saying we have sustainable lines, we're doing all this work towards sustainability, and they have 8% of all of the clothing that they produce has anything related to being sustainable.
It's sort of like if in order to be labeled as organic, it's like what, 5% of the cotton or something has to be organic. Yeah, great, good for you. And the other thing that gets, and Cassandra, that's such a great example, because the other thing about H&M that stands out to me is their role in fast fashion. And so if you're not familiar with fast fashion, I encourage you to look up Patriot Act. And I'm not going to say his name because I get it wrong every time, but he does a deep dive on fast fashion and how abhorrent that is. So I would say even if H&M managed to convert to 100% sustainable, if they're doing anything to try to be trend setting, they play a role in unethical clothes manufacturing because they're still trying to create clothing lines fast and get it out to people. That's a great example. Anyone else want to share?
What I think is interesting in the world of sustainability and marketing is that companies like that are marketing themselves as the best in sustainability are really missing the entire point. Like I was thinking about cars, and like Mercedes did this ad recently, and it just got me thinking about how no one's talking about how collaborative we all need to be, and those are the brands that really do well. Yeah, just the whole car industry is insane. But
yeah, and you know, I would say like my business. So there's basically two of us behind Tinderbox Marketing. I get to be the public face of the company, interacting with clients, and my wife is probably the most important piece. She sits behind the scenes, does bookkeeping, invoicing, and all of that stuff. So it'd be really easy for me to make the claim that we're the most sustainable marketing company in Spokane, especially right now. I don't even drive anywhere, right? Everything's done from home. But how do you verify that? And I think that's the other thing. If it's not verifiable, or if you're not willing to I think of any nonprofit that doesn't easily publish their fiscal reports. Like I think about that. Like if I can't find where your money goes within 2 clicks on your website, then you're intentionally not letting me find that, right? That's how I view that. All right. So on that note, now that we have this idea of what, you know, some 6 boundaries for what qualifies as unethical, and before we get into really what I think ethical marketing is, or how you do it, I think what the most important thing is to start with a definition so that we're all on the same page. And I do this with my clients. I walk people through this. In fact, Annie mentioned it. I'm not trying to do a shameless plug. It just kind of fits in, but I do free marketing reviews for anybody that wants one for their business. You go to my website, fill out a questionnaire, but that questionnaire is designed to do a couple things as a part of my business process. And the first one is I want the information so that it can give you an accurate marketing review. But the second thing is I'm profiling you. Like I need to understand if you're a good fit. And the other thing is I'm trying to gauge your knowledge and understanding of marketing. So I ask intentional questions. And one of them is I say, what's your definition of marketing? What's your definition of advertising? And then I ask, what's your definition of sales or business development? And the reason why I ask that is most people give a very similar definition for all 3. And they're all similar and they're all very much interconnected, but they're all very much different. And so these are my terms. You don't have to use them after today, but just so that we're speaking the same language. To me, marketing sits as everything you do to tell the story about your products, your company, or anything to do with your services or what you're selling. And a lot of times those things don't have huge costs associated with them. So I think of social media, most of it's free. Like all of them allow you to have an account for free or a profile for your business for free. So those are low cost options. But then there are some things that might have a cost associated with it, but it's more of a one-off. So if you build a website or you have a logo or you develop a business card or a brochure, you'll pay for those things, but that doesn't guarantee that anybody's going to see them. So we think of marketing as this storytelling piece, right? How do we get awareness of our product, services, or our company out into the marketplace? Advertising is when we pay to reach people, right? So my kids know that without a doubt because they watch YouTube occasionally, they watch TV, they know what ads are, and they'll tell you they hate them. So advertising is what we think of, and we don't always make that correlation between an ad and advertising. So advertising is a function of marketing, but it's when we're paying to reach people. And one of my favorite voices in marketing is Seth Godin, and he wrote a book, I think now almost 25 years ago, called Permission Marketing, which is this idea that the marketing in the future, and he wrote this 25 years ago, but he was basically hypothesizing that the most effective marketing and the marketing in the future will be marketing when you have permission. So Annie asked you all to join this, and then you joined, and now we have permission to talk to you. And so opting in is another way to think of it. If I've opted into your newsletter, or if I've opted in to follow your Facebook page, you now have permission to interrupt me because I've given it to you. Advertising is not permission-based marketing, right? Now, when I'm on Facebook, I know that a byproduct of being there is I'm going to get ads. If I have the basic Hulu subscription, I know that a byproduct is going to be ads. So there's an argument that maybe it's not permission-based, but maybe it's also not interruptive, right? It's not direct advertising. But regardless, advertising is when we're paying for it. And that can be anything traditional from billboards to newspaper to radio, TV, and all the digital. So Facebook, Google, all of those things. So advertising is that paying piece. And then sales or business development is the transaction. When we do our job well, when we market and advertise well, we're driving people, you'll hear the funnel a lot, but we're driving people closer to making a decision. And then that's when business development or sales can take place, right? So that's the funnel. And you'll hear a lot of like click funnels. We can talk about that if you want, but essentially what we're trying to do with our marketing and our advertising is we're trying to get people to make a decision. And this is where the ethics comes in. How are we encouraging them to make that decision? So when we think about things like making exaggerated claims or false comparisons, we're actually trying to manipulate a decision, right? We're not honestly encouraging a decision, we're manipulating it. So understanding that marketing, advertising, and sales are all crazy connected. And the other thing is they're connected also that your salespeople or you doing sales, I do sales for my business, we're also marketers, right? And understanding the roles of all three will help you drive a more successful marketing platform and also a more successful business development platform. Any questions on that? I know I just totally vomited. Yeah, Seth Godin came out with a new book called The Practice. I also just did a workshop on Friday where he has another book. I'll get the name of it, but he wrote one about 2 years ago where he basically dissects marketing from beginning to end and gives you all the definitions, and then also goes into, you know, direct versus permission-based and all of that. So his blog daily and without fail, by the way, his blog is daily without fail. And it's amazing. I have like 4 of them pulled up right now that I'll be referencing throughout the rest of this afternoon. So any questions on that? Anybody have any questions on, you know, marketing, advertising, and sales and those definitions? The one thing to keep in mind too, before we go much further is if you do your job right, all three are working in unison. Think of it as 3 gears of a machine with the results being in the middle, whether or not you succeed or reach your goals or have any sales. You can be a wonderful marketer and have a wonderful advertising platform, but if you have a terrible sales staff or if you're not good at it and you're the only one doing it, then you've got a broken machine, right? And we have to take a look at that. I will tell you from experience now of helping businesses for 7 years, almost 8 in marketing, sales is always the weak link. So it doesn't mean you have to run out and hire somebody, but if you're not comfortable doing it, let's call it business development so you can get over that hump. And then let's pick the brain of Gina because it sounds like she might be an expert. But really, there's a lot of ways to demystify that process. And there's a lot of great resources out there. And if you have some, please throw it in chat. But business development, if I'm driving traffic and I'm creating leads and I'm getting people interested in a product, but then I'm not very good at closing the sale, it doesn't matter how good my marketing and advertising is. And the reverse is true as well. I've met wonderful salespeople who are really genuine, authentic, who don't lie, who don't manipulate. Think opposite used car salesperson, but they don't have any marketing or advertising to speak of. So what good is being great at sales if you don't have anybody to sell to? Or what's great at developing business if you don't have anybody to, you know, close the deal with? So those are that's my soapbox as far as those 3 things are concerned. And
hey,
then,
Josh,
yeah.
Could you just give like a quick summary of your 3 distinctions between marketing and sales? And,
yep. So, yep, absolutely. Marketing. Yeah, absolutely. Marketing is the storytelling. Advertising is paying to get that story in front of the right audience. Sales is the transaction, right? So it's whatever that looks like for your organization. I don't have it down here. I might be able to track. The Harvard Business Journal, is that what it's called? Harvard Business Review? Mm-hmm. The magazine that's $15, in case you didn't know. I found out when I bought it at airport. Anyway, They have an article that came out a few years ago about where they did a survey of Fortune 500 companies to find out the ones that were trending up and the ones that were trending down, what was the differences between those companies. And what they found was that the companies that no longer siloed marketing, advertising, and sales, and what was weird is to find that a lot of them did, is they had a marketing team and an advertising team and a sales teams and none of them talked to each other or coordinated with each other. The companies that were trending in the right direction, and they used Coca-Cola as the example, had actually fully integrated all three departments, and in some cases even looped IT underneath that. So you had your VP of marketing and sales and IT, and then all three teams were working in conjunction. And what they did is they not only had those three teams working on the same set of goals, but they were also educating and training the entire company on their roles in marketing and sales. And basically it's don't badmouth Coke and don't drink Pepsi when you're out in public, right? Like those kinds of things. But the companies that were doing a good job of that and getting the culture to understand at a company that you're all a part of marketing and sales, they were doing a really good job and trending up. And then the ones that still had them siloed and weren't educating everybody were trending the other way. So just something to keep in mind. If I find the link or if I have a minute, I'll find it and send it to you.
Josh,
So, yeah.
quickly, this is not really related to ethical marketing, but do you think anyone can be a good salesperson? Or
Okay.
specific
Yes and
things?
no. If you are an owner operator or practitioner like me, you don't have a choice. So that's where I say yes, right? So if you're Mark and Kara, you don't have a choice. You have to figure this out. And then at that point, it's just how willing are you to learn and get good at it? And I never, ever, ever say that you have to be sleazy. I mean, I'm talking about ethical marketing, for crying out loud. I would never then turn around and say, do whatever it takes to close the sale, ever, ever. But I do think that there is a process that you can go through, and it just comes down to tracking activity and being responsible to yourself and understanding, you know, how many prospects and leads you have and what is your process for those. When you demystify that process, it becomes a lot easier to do. And then the other reason why I say no is I don't think you should hire somebody to do business development for your company that isn't suited for that job, right? I mean, your interview process will make that clear, but you're going to find there are just people who are good at it and there are people who aren't good at it. And I think if you're hiring for it, then you need to be hiring people that are going to represent your company well, ethically, in the marketplace well, because they're going to be the face of your company when they're out in the market. But then also that have a really good talent for building relationships. And honestly, my thought on sales is it's all about developing relationships and taking care of people.
And just two quick things, Josh. One is I don't have to be good at business development. That's part of why I hired Annie. and Kara's far better than I am. So I don't do that. And then secondly, just while you're on the topic of Coke is there, so I think that's great to understand how they've integrated marketing, sales, and advertising, but they're also a great example of why you shouldn't put your sustainability program to report to marketing, that it should be separate and report directly to the CEO.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah.
They were the example that I could think of. I'm sure there's better ones from the article that we could look to.
No, it's all
good. When it comes to how to become an ethical marketer, I want to just basically walk you through my process that I walk through with every client. And the reason is I think that if you focus on these things, I don't think you'll have any missteps. Where I start with all of my clients, if I'm brought in to help a company develop a marketing plan or work on their business model canvas, the first thing I started with is, what is your mission? And I'll find the TED Talk right now. And this person, I think there's a lot of people who have a great affinity for Simon Sinek, and then I think that there's a lot of critics. But you cannot, I don't think, debate his arguments in this TED Talk and his book, which is the really great companies and the really great leaders in the world all communicate the same way. And when it comes to mission, they always start with why do they do what they do? And then they tell you how they do it. And then they tell you what they do. And he gives in his book several examples. And in the TED Talk, he gives a few of these as well. But his examples are Apple, Martin Luther King Jr., and the Wright brothers. And the fascinating one to me is always the Wright brothers, only because I didn't know this, but they were just passionate about man-powered flight or human-powered flight. They owned a bike shop. They didn't know anything about flying. They were not scientists or physicists or anything. I find that fascinating. And then at the same time, there was a gentleman named Samuel Pierpont Langley, who was well funded from the US government to figure out flying. And he didn't. And the day the Wright brothers solved it, he quit and he gave up and walked away. It's a fascinating, I think, story of this. The other one that's so easy for me to understand, and I think all of us is Apple. Raise your hand if you own an Apple product or on an Apple product right now. Okay, so I think the majority of us, not good or bad, that's just an observation. But if you think back to when Apple was at its truly most innovative, which is when they launched the first version of the iPhone, Apple had a very clear-cut mission. And their mission was to challenge the status quo and think differently. That's their why. Has nothing to do with product or unique value proposition or values or vision statement. It's just, we believe in thinking differently and we believe in challenging the status quo. Their how, the way they challenge the status quo, is by creating products that are beautifully designed, easy to use, and user-friendly. Again, no specific mention of product or deliverable. What they do is they just happen to make great computers or iPods or TVs or, fill in the blank. So he gives that as the template to follow. And so Annie actually read mine, right? Because I've done a good job of marketing. My mission and the mission of Tinderbox is to serve God by serving others. And I don't go into anything else until I then walk you through my process. I think if you walk through the process of developing a really sound mission that starts with your values and your beliefs, I think you will take your first steps to avoiding unethical marketing or sales or advertising. Because I think this group, unique to a lot of other groups, are a bunch of mission-driven folks, right? I think you all have really great ideas, and I think you're all motivated in the right reasons. Some of you I know better than others. So I think if you start with that, and what's really funny about this, and I'll find it, so if you give me a second, I'll talk while I'll try to multitask, which is definitely not a strength of mine. But I've always wondered when I heard this TED Talk from Simon Sinek, if that's really what Apple does, right? Is that really how they think? Now, if you walk back in time, their advertising campaign for a long time was actually think different, or that was at the bottom of all their commercials. Then I found this really interesting YouTube video of Steve Jobs talking about this exact thing. So if you watch the video, if you want to just get to the nuts and bolts, start at 3:12 and end at the 7-minute mark. But he also brings up a couple other products at this time. He brings up Nike. So if you think about the mission of Nike, not a great example of sustainability or anything else. But when you think about Nike, and I've heard it said this way, if you thought about Nike and what if they were to launch a hotel, what that hotel would be like, we can all envision that. That's because they do a great job of marketing and building a brand, and we're very clearly understand what they're all about. And Steve Jobs says in the video that Nike's all about honoring great athletes and great athletics. Most of the time, their commercials, their marketing doesn't even feature a product. It just features you putting yourself in the shoes of the athlete that you're seeing, right? Figuratively and literally. And I think that's such a great comparison to draw. So he goes on to say that Apple at the core, their core value is that they believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. That mission then drives everything they do, because now they're just about equipping people to go out and change the world. Right? So it's super easy to get there. So I think if you start with mission more than anything else, you're gonna take your first right steps. If you don't know how to do this, I have some really great tips. The easiest way to do this is to get yourself in a room with a whiteboard or a big 3M sticky notepad or whatever, and just start writing down what you're passionate about, what you believe. Keywords. A buddy of mine, Mike Pudiatin, who also was a fellow person. That's how I know Mark and Kara. We all met at fellow, and Mike does it in sticky notes. So Mike has you write down a single word that you would use to define yourself or your company, or a statement of, what do you believe or what's important to you? And then he has you put those all out on a table, and then he says, now you can only pick 3. You have to whittle it down to the 3 most important things, your core values. So any kind of exercise you go through to get there is great. I like whiteboarding. It's how I prefer to do it. If you have a team, one thing I really like now is brain writing instead of brainstorming, where everybody's writing down their ideas and not doing call outs right away. It keeps the traditionally dominant voices in the room a little quiet so that you can get good feedback from everyone. So start with your mission. The next thing I think is really important to avoid unethical marketing and to embrace ethical marketing is to outline your goals. And your goals can be, I like to think in chunks. So I think always in overall company goals. And this is where I'll reference my first Seth Godin article. And when you're thinking about goals, it's important to think about what he goes on to say. I'll share this article with you. Is he basically says there's no such thing as business ethics. Oh, Annie, I could use visioning exercise just for my personal life. Hey, do it. He says that business don't have ethics, people do. And he goes on to write a whole blog about that, and it's one of his longer ones, but he says it comes down to this: only people can have ethics. Ethics as in doing the right thing for the community, even though it might not benefit you or your company financially. He says that the ethics of a business are fiduciary responsibility to maximize profit. So when you're thinking overall goals, especially if you think like a B Corp, they may have nothing to do with profit or sales or revenue. They may have everything to do with impacting your community for the better. Now, I'm a big believer that your goals need to be measurable. So how do you measure that? So you might need to work with Mark and Kara and Annie on how to define measurable goals around that. But if you came to me and said, I want to get to $100 million in revenue, that's a goal that's measurable and we can work backward from that. But if you came to me and said, I want to impact my community for the better, we're going to have to put our thinking caps on and really sort through that. I also think it's important to think in groups of 3. You can have more, but I think you should always strive to have 3 goals. So we're going to think company goals first. What are the 3 goals our company wants to achieve? And then what I like to go into is what are our marketing goals? Well, if you came to me with revenue-based goals, we can do our homework, we can do our math, and we can work backwards. So if you say, I want to get to $100 million in revenue, I'll ask you, well, where are you at now? Well, I'm at $1 million. Okay, if you're at $1 million in gross revenue, how many products do you have to sell to get there? And you tell me how many products or widgets or whatever, and then we just multiply, right? It's just simple math. So those are easy goals, but the untangible goals are different. And then there's some goals that some people don't measure, which is again, impact goals on your community or sustainability goals. I think those environmental impact, those are all things that you could work with Kara, Mark, and Annie to help develop. There's other ones that we should be considering here, which is also employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction. Those aren't always included in overall company goals, but we need to be aware of those. You can create metrics for those. You could just say, hey, I want to track my customer reviews online and I want to increase them for better or worse. If you have ever sold on Amazon, that's a huge metric that they measure, is not just your overall customer satisfaction, but your number of reviews. If your reviews stagnate on Amazon, your product's not going to fit the algorithm as well. So we got to keep those things in mind as we're setting our goals. But I like to just think 3 big company goals, and then from there, work to find 3 marketing goals. From there, you can create other goals like sales goals. You should have those. So your sales team or you are knowing what you're driving at. But if you think in that tiered system, your sales goals, your fiduciary responsibility isn't driving all of your other efforts, right? So I think what happens is a lot of companies, they start with those sales goals and then they work from there, and that causes them to make decisions that they may not otherwise make. Seth Godin writes, he wrote a lot about ethics, in case you're wondering. He wrote another blog where he says, most companies strive to just be ethical enough. And that's not what we're going for. One of my favorite, I know not all of you follow the same faith as I do, and I'm totally aware of that and understand that, but one of the voices that I pay attention to a lot in my own faith is a gentleman named Andy Stanley. And he talks about how what a lot of Christianity is based around is finding that line of just being good enough or just being bad enough, right? Where does good end and sin begin? And that's not what we're doing here, right? We're not going to do that. We're not going to strive to be just ethical enough. So by starting with these overall company goals, But really starting with our mission and what we're trying to do is going to help us create an ethics process, right? This way to avoid unethical marketing. So mission and then goals. This next one's the big one, and this is one of my favorites. The next one is you have to know your customer. And you have to answer a couple questions about this. First off, you have to answer the question, what problem are you solving? Are you even solving a problem? A lot of businesses have really great products and really great ideas that no one buys because they're not actually solving a problem, or they're not solving a problem that people realize is a problem. And if that's the case, then you might find yourself in early adopter stage, which is, I think, kind of where measurement lives a lot of times, until everyone understands what a B Corp is, and we understand it more so than what a C Corp or an S Corp or any other Corp is. They're dealing with early adopters, which is totally fine. So real quick, can I share my screen, Annie? I can't not. Am I set up to do that?
Yeah, are you enabled to do that?
We will find out. Oh, yep, I am. Okay, so
Perfect.
if you can see my screen, you should be seeing a business model canvas or a lean canvas. Thumbs up. Are we all seeing that? So what I like to start with here, this is how to build a business plan for 2020. And now I know, Cassandra, are you folks at the SBDC? Is that what you said you're with? Are you embracing it? I mentor with SCORE, your cousin organization.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
SCORE's coming around to it.
We have a lot of the younger advisors are, and a lot of the more senior advisors are not.
They want the business plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just so you know, for your information, I know SCORE mentors that have worked on these with a client and then actually still been able to get a bank loan with just a business model canvas, not even a business plan. So all that to say, when I work with a business, we have mission. Mission doesn't live here. You could say it's under your unique value proposition or your unfair advantage. But mission statement is it not a part of this business model canvas or this lean canvas. But you'll see I like to start with customer segments. You can see here, I didn't make this up. There's a little section underneath that one that says early adopters. So you might be so new to solving a problem that maybe people don't know it's a problem yet, and that's okay. So we'll start there. Then what we do with understanding our customers, we got to know what's their problem. What problem are you solving for them? In Simon Sinek's book and in his TED Talk, he talks about TiVo and how TiVo came out and had all this money and they marketed and they advertised, but they missed the problem. And because they have a good mission statement. They told you about all the features of what TiVoing is, right? Pause, fast forward, rewind. At that time, you have to remember, we were also ingrained and used to watching broadcast television that it never occurred to us to do anything different. DVR wasn't a thing. TiVo wasn't a thing. So they were pushing this. I mean, we all know what TiVo is. In fact, for a while, you didn't say I DVR'd it. You would say I TiVo'd it. Even if you didn't have a TiVo, even if you just had a DVR. What he says in his TED Talk and in the book is that what they should have actually been doing in their marketing and in their mission was going this way. If you're the kind of person who wants total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. And it's different, right? We believe that our customers want, desire, and need control over their lives. And then they would go on. The way we give them control is by allowing them to, blah, 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 blah. So what you have to do is go, what's our customer? And this is where you have to really be bold and brave. And here's my example of some industries that are commonly not bold or brave. And the first one is, and these aren't all, this is not intended to be a blanket statement, but in general, realtors are very terrible at this. Realtors say, I can list any home and I can work with any buyer. When in reality, they're not qualified to list your $1 million mansion and they hate millennials, right? So you have to, Gina's laughing. You don't hate millennials, do you, Gina? Okay, your daughter is one, right? So you just have to be okay with knowing that not everybody's buy your product or service, right? My favorite example of all time is I was doing a workshop down in the Palouse and I'm going through this same conversation and the person in the group is just laughing. And I stop. I said, you have to tell me what's going on. And they said, well, our business is we run a retail lingerie shop for full-figured women. Like right off the bat, not everybody, right? But they embraced that. That was their business model. Now imagine what marketing might look like if they try to convince everybody to go there. They're going to have a lot of people walk in who just don't need what they have or can't fit in what they have. The other argument there is that they have two customers, the primary customer who's going to buy their product for themselves, and then the person who's going to buy it for them, spouse, significant other, whatever it might be. So when I think about my customers, I'm always thinking about who's the most likely to walk through my door or call me, right? Who is the most likely, and narrow it down, and it's okay. You're not going to sell to everybody. You can't. I would rather you be way more successful at selling to a smaller group and marketing to a smaller group than trying to hit everybody. And then what you can do is work on maybe a secondary customer profile, and then maybe even a tertiary or a third customer. But once you know your customer, now it's really easy to market to them. Once you understand the ins and outs of them and what matters to them and what drives them, because now we can create messaging and a story that reaches them. It's not about manipulating them. It's about connecting them with them on where they are and maybe hopefully aligning in values. And here's the example. When Apple came out with the iPhone, do you remember how long the lines were? And then when they launched a new one, how long? Now we just order online and we don't think about that. But there was a time when iPhone 2 and iPhone 3 and iPhone 4 came out that the Apple Store had lines around the block or down the street. Why did all those people line up to buy a smartphone that by that time when the 4 came out, you could get an LG or a Samsung, all really great phones? And it wasn't just because I like Apple better. It was because when I have a smartphone from Apple, I am showing you that I think differently and I like to challenge the status quo. When I open my laptop and you see that Apple in Starbucks or in the coffee shop, I'm telling you, I'm communicating my values to you through the products that I'm displaying. When I open up my HP ThinkPad or whatever they have, I'm not telling you a whole lot other than maybe my company gave me this, right? This is my standard issue laptop. So when we think about how to create messaging for that customer group, we're talking about reaching them with the values that they might share with us. They may not share all of our values, but I'll tell you this, I have sat in fellow in one of their booths across the table from members of the LGBTQ community, atheists, Kara being one of them. I hope I didn't let that toothpaste out of the tube. Can't put it back now. Who had nothing in common with my faith value, but all told me, I appreciate and value that you own what's important to you. And because at that point, I'm not trying to convert. I'm not even trying to beat you over the head with it. I'm just telling you what matters to me. And what they value more than my statement about my faith is my statement that I really am here to serve others. Money, that's a byproduct. Clients are even a byproduct. My close ratio, when I finally do my marketing well and you get a marketing review from me, I will do 10 and 1 will become a client. And that's pretty standard close ratio across all marketing agencies. HubSpot did a survey a number of years ago, and they surveyed all different categories of businesses just to see what close ratios were. And for marketing companies, it's 11%. So the good news is I'm not far off the mark. The bad news is I have to meet a lot of people who are going to tell me no. So going back to that sales conversation, I have to be okay with people telling me no. And at first I really struggled with that. I'm going to get all these people that I'm going to market to, and they're going to say no. What do I do? Well, if I was a revenue-based company and I was unethical, I would be changing my process to convert more and to get more yeses. Instead, what I did is I decided, and again, it's not patting myself on the back. It's just what happened. It's just my belief. I went, how do I develop a relationship with somebody, those other 9, that is meaningful for both of us? How do I build trust? And what I found when I did that is that those folks are willing to refer to me, even if they never spent a dime with me. And that all comes back to value-based mission statement and promoting that through ethical marketing. I don't try to lie to people. I don't try to give them bad information. I don't manipulate them. I try to connect with business owners where they are. I work with business owners. So the messaging that I try to get out there is, if marketing doesn't make sense to you, or if you're too busy, or you can't afford to hire somebody, I have a solution for you. right? And now during COVID, it's shifted to, if you want to figure out how to get through this, I've got some resources for you. Even if you don't hire me, I've got some things that we can do to help you out. And then because of that, the byproduct is revenue. Okay, so I'm looking at the clock. I don't know how long we're actually supposed to go. Did I just use all my time?
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock, and Josh, I feel like we're just gonna have to have you on again, because that was just awesome, and I learned so much. And we wanna give away a gift card to Happy Trails to Brews really quick.
Yes.
Your pick, well, yeah, this was Josh's pick. Do you wanna talk about them at all?